Sometimes people with cancer like to try alternatives, and they'll choose from a lot of different anti-cancer remedies out there, but I found that there's three basic categories that the anti-cancer drugs fall into. We have three plants that we use, plant medicines that are fairly common for suppression of cancer growth, that could be used as an adjunct to standard medicine, or in some cases, especially on reservations, you might find people using these to stop cancer growth and even reverse it without taking any chemotherapy. And one that seems to have been successful and also shows clinical results as an anti-cancer drug is the amygdalin in seeds of the rose family. Probably the most recognizable indigenous food where you can get that is chokecherries. So a diet high in chokecherries on a daily basis, which of course is traditional food for many, many tribes, is an easy one to get. It's easy to take. It's traditional, and indigenous people on many reservations use it as a pudding, as a gravy for meat, and as a drink. And that involves crushing the whole chokecherry with the pit inside, which releases the amygdalin in the seed when you grind it up, which is the traditional way to make goat soup, which is the Shoshone pudding that's made with chokecherries and a little flour as a thickener. So you grind up the flesh of the chokecherry and grind it with the pit and the seed. And it's kind of gritty, but very sweet, good tasting berry with the flesh that's purple due to the presence of an antioxidant called OPC. And OPC is oligomeric proanthocyanidin, which inhibits metastatic cancer. And at the same time, you have amygdalin in the seed itself, which is released when you grind it into goat soup. And that inhibits neovascularization, which is the creation of blood supply to an abnormal growth, either benign or malignant growth. This makes sense from two different angles to use seeds in the rose family and flesh of the rose family to inhibit cancer growth. So in that case, you would eat something like a cupful of chokecherry goat soup, which is the pudding, or drink chokecherry juice every day. And keeping it in the bloodstream constantly has the effect of inhibiting the cancer growth. So this was shown about 3 years ago in a biomedical study that was done by a Paiute Shoshone woman named Destiny Sky Pete. So her studies showed in vitro blood markers for cardiovascular health, and most cancers actually start in the interior lining of the cardiovascular system, whether it's in the kidney or in the lungs or some other part of the body. The actual abnormal growth starts in blood vessels in those organs. And the study she did shows that blood markers after eating chokecherry improved cardiovascular health in the intima layer or the interior lining of the blood vessels. So this would work as a prophylactic for cancer, to not only treat it but to prevent it. It also showed that goat soup inhibited tumor growth. So she did a follow-up study to remove the seeds, as white man does when he makes chokecherry fruit leather or drinks. You usually spin out the seeds. And when you just use the flesh of the chokecherry, it did not have a tumor inhibition. So it kind of proved that the tumor inhibiting qualities of chokecherry came from the seeds, which is what we knew all along anyway. Seeds of the rose family, of which chokecherry is a member, works as an anti-cancer compound, amygdalin. So you have two anti-cancer qualities to chokecherry. The dark purple color of the berry improves cardiovascular health and therefore is a prophylactic for metastatic cancer. And the seed inhibits neovascularization, or the food supply to a tumor or abnormal growth. So that's one food. Another is the addition of plants that contain selenium in an absorbable form, which is a chelate form. And gumweed is a good plant for this. There are many others. Brazil nuts work for this, although Brazil nuts vary tremendously in their selenium content. Peruvian Brazil nuts are very high in selenium, so that 5 Brazil nuts a day gives you well over 200 micrograms, which is a good therapeutic dose for cancer. Bolivian Brazil nuts are very low in selenium compounds, so they're not used for treatment of cancer. But gumweed is fairly reliable if you get it from a limestone or alluvial type of soil. So you need to know what kind of soil the gumweed is growing in. But gumweed as a medicinal plant has selenium as a chelate in the form of selenocysteine, which is very absorbable for mammals and immediately gets converted into antioxidants that are known as anti-cancer drugs. We have good clinical evidence that selenium can be used to prevent cancer and to treat tumors. So selenium in the form of gumweed is a form known as selenocysteine, which can actually cross the blood-brain barrier, which makes it interesting for brain cancer. Americans generally and people in civilized, what we call civilized countries, tend to eat food out of the grocery store, which tends to be low in selenium because sustained high-yield agriculture that we subscribe to generally doesn't put selenium back in the soil, so that selenium tends to be deficient in all of our common foods. So if you start with the premise that most Americans are deficient in selenium to some degree, then supplementing it through gumweed actually works as a medicine. Whereas indigenous diets that relied on wild foods for the most part, especially nomadic cultures, had plenty of selenium in their diet because it's common in wild foods. The third thing that works well is to augment the supply of antioxidants to prevent the formation of new cancers while you're trying to recover from an existing cancer. And there again is the proanthocyanidins that you can get from purple-colored fruits. And the highest source of those proanthocyanidins is hawthorn berries. Hawthorn berries are very dark in one species called black hawthorn, Crataegus douglasii. That black hawthorn is called black because of a very, very deep purple color that looks black. It's actually purple. So that's the most concentrated form of proanthocyanidin to prevent additional cancers after you've been diagnosed with one, so that you can use it as a prophylactic. So those are the 3 main things: gumweed, Grandelia squarosa, for the selenium antioxidant source, seeds in the rose family such as chokecherry, and a lot of the fruits that you can buy in the store, but the seeds of them, like plums and apricots, apples, peaches, pears, those are all in the rose family, and a lot of wild berries also. So those seeds are high in amygdalin, which inhibits neovascularization or shuts down the food supply going to an abnormal growth that could be malignant or cancerous. And the proanthocyanidins from dark-colored berries. Now, in addition to that, those are the 3 basic elements to a natural anti-cancer mixture of containing foods. In addition to that, you can add a lot of other anti-cancer foods like asparagus or cruciferous foods that are in the mustard family, like cabbage and broccoli. Broccoli is especially good because in addition to having the elements of cruciferous foods, it has a very high level of glutathione, which transports selenium and works as an anti-cancer drug because of its antioxidant qualities, the drug glutathione. It's really a peptide. You have these additional things you can add. They are adjuncts to these basic 3 plant medicines that we talked about.